Hello, everyone. This is Wes Henson, pastor of the Ridge Church, and the Ridge Church campus is located at 7350 Old Highway 13. And this is the concluding session of the series that we've been looking at entitled The Church God Desires. And then for the last 6 weeks, we have focused on the 7 churches mentioned in the book of Revelation. And as we apply Jesus' message to those 7 churches to our own church, we present to the world a clear picture of who Jesus is. In session 1, we focused on the church at Ephesus, and we learned that the church that God desires is characterized by love for Jesus. And the point of the study was that we should ground everything that we do in our love for the Lord. In session 2, the church at Smyrna. And the church God desires is steadfast in the midst of difficulties. The point was that we do not need to fear, to be afraid, because we are rich in God's grace. And then session 3, the church at Pergamum. Uncompromising with truth was the title session for that study. And the point was, when it comes to biblical truth about Christ, there is no room for compromise. Session 4, we focused on the church at Thyatira. The church that God desires is strong in purity. Purity in all things impacts our service for Jesus. Session 5, the church at Sardis was focused on, and the title of the session was Be Vigilant Against Complacency. And the point there was that we need to stay alert and focused on the things of God. And then last week, we looked at the church at Philadelphia. The title of last week's lesson was Be Faithful in All Things. And the point was that we are to faithfully trust God as we minister to others. And we looked at Revelation chapter 3, verses 7 through 13. If you click below, you'll find a 2-page outline and a study guide for this session. And also, there are, I think, about 3 pages of handouts that are beneficial in our study of Revelation and the 7 churches. So I invite you to join me on Tuesday at 6:30 on Facebook, on our website, as we study these passages in detail. Now, this week, we are focused on the church at Laodicea. That's our concluding study. And the title of the session is Sufficient in Jesus Alone. And the point is that God provides all that we need as we pursue Christ daily. And we'll be looking in Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 through 22. The church at Laodicea was an important commercial center. The soil of the region was extremely fertile. There were many vineyards planted in that area. They were also famous for a medical school that had an ointment for ears and a salve for eyes. So that was unique to that area. However, Laodicea did not have a good water supply to the city, and so water had to be piped in from 2 other cities, Colossae and Hierapolis. And by the time that water arrived to the city, it was lukewarm. The water at Colossae was very cold. The water at Hierapolis was very warm. They had the hot springs there. But when it got to the city, it was just lukewarm, neither refreshing nor therapeutic. And it was also filled with minerals, so to taste it was quite nauseating. All right, let's take a look at our study passage. We're first of all going to look at Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 through 17. In verse 15, it reads, Jesus saying, I know your works. And we've seen that before in our study, that phrase. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. Wow, that's pretty harsh. The truth here is that we are to turn away from self-sufficiency. The heart of the problem for the church at Laodicea was their self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is the opposite of faith. Jesus set the record straight when he said in verse 17, he said, you don't realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. They may have been wealthy in material goods, but they were destitute in the true wealth and the things they needed that come only through trusting Jesus. All right, verses 18 and 19. Verse 18 says, I advise you to buy from me gold refined in fire. It goes on to say, white clothes so that you may be dressed, and ointments to spread on your eyes so that you may see. So the truth here is that we're to rely on Jesus and to accept God's loving discipline and repent. So when it talks about gold refined, when a person goes through God's refining process, our impurities are brought into focus so God can remove them from our lives. White clothes. When Jesus was talking about that, the people in Laodicea may have had fine clothes to wear, but they had not clothed themselves with what mattered. Laodicea was also a place where black fabric was produced and very popular. And then he talks about ointment. The city was known for helping people to see, but yet they themselves were quite blind. And so Jesus assures these believers of his love. Even though he's bringing this rebuke against them, he's assuring them of his love for them, because in verse 19, he says, this is the reason why I'm disciplining you. Verse 19 reads, as many as I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be zealous and repent. And we repent when we turn around and we go in the other direction. We don't just turn from something, but we turn from something and then turn to Jesus, running to him for the true riches, the real clothing, and the perfect sight that only he can provide. All right, let's finish up here in verses 20 and 22. Verse 20 says, see, Jesus speaking, see, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. The truth here is that we are to seek intimate fellowship with Jesus, to sit down and have a meal with him, if you will. And even though the Laodicean church had turned its back on the Lord was ready and willing to come into them and to dine with them together. And this is a picture that no other religion offers, because you see, it is a picture of God seeking us out and desiring a relationship with him, even though we may have turned our back on the Lord. Okay, what can we do with this lesson? How will we live out the truths of this passage? Let me offer 3 quick applications. Number 1, confess. Let's go to the Lord and ask the Lord to reveal those areas in our lives where we have been relying upon ourselves instead of relying upon the Lord. And let's confess them to the Lord. And then refocus. That's the application number 2. Perhaps we need to refocus our priorities, and we need to work at eliminating the activities and the people in our life that take us away from having an intimate relationship with Jesus. And then application number 3, we need to share with someone how we plan to make Jesus the first in our life, and give them our step-by-step plan for doing that. Let's wrap it all up today. There are lots of things that look good on the outside, but the taste is something altogether different. Let's make sure that we aren't like that by living authentic lives before God and others. Click below for a 2-page outline, a study guide, some resources and handouts, and then join me on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. on Facebook and our website as we study these passages in detail. Bye now.